Hello, you are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, I didn't give you a name.
No.
Spencer, the Royale Runaway Church.
Yeah.
That fits the James Bond theme.
Yeah.
And joining us today, a lover of James Bond, I assume, Ash from the You Read This podcast. How are you doing, sir?
Very well. Yes, I was a lover of the films as a child, and sort of I continue to love them a bit guiltily. Books, kind of, but having reread them for this, I'm not really sure. They are quite gross.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit gross. Well, before we even get into the book, I feel like James Bond definitely hits different overseas than it does here.
Yeah.
So, one, what is the perception of James Bond in England for, because in America, he's just kind of like a badass spy, but I feel like Americans like James Bond movies, but we don't. I feel like England after World War II kind of needed a hero, especially, I would say, probably starting in the 50s, and I would imagine more so afterwards. They kind of were looking for the masculine hero figure for England, so I feel like that probably hits more over there than it does us. So what is the perception of James Bond in England? Is he more popular, you think, than in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're right. I think also England needed a sex symbol, crucially, because there's nothing really that sexy about English heroes.
No.
Since, I would say since about Shakespeare time, no one's really been convincingly sexy as an English actor.
No.
So I think like Sean Connery as James Bond was pretty unprecedented as a kind of English star, because he's a very Hollywood looking, and they're kind of Hollywood budget production level films. If you take away the accent, there's really nothing English about them. So I think that's part of the popularity of the films then. Now I think probably the status of James Bond is similar to where it is everywhere, which is slightly embarrassing and completely unacceptable. In a bit of a character crisis, like how on earth do we? MGM must be just thinking, how do we salvage this very profitable franchise? Because nothing about it is acceptable by today's standings. He's not very good with women. Racially, he's been incredibly dubious for a long time.
Yes.
It's like every possible mark he's crossed. So, but you're right. He's a bit of a national symbol, unlike obviously anywhere else. He is the English. Well, I was going to say Bourne, but it's kind of, I suppose Bourne is a bit later, isn't it? I don't know who's the quintessential American hero. Maybe Indiana Jones. He's the English Indiana Jones.
Yeah, there you go. That works.
Yeah.
Over here, Sean Connery is often considered the best Bond of all time, but he's a Scotsman. Does that throw any wrenches into the gears there over in England?
See, I figured as long as it's not American, they don't care.
They don't care as long as it's not American with a bad accent.
It could maybe even be like French-Canadian.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think basically the English just claimed Sean Connery. So I think it caused problems for Sean Connery because he was a very proud Scot. Although, I have to say on behalf of lots of Scottish people, since I'm currently living there, he didn't love Scotland enough to not move to the Bahamas or wherever he ended up.
Yeah.
But and I think he accepted a knighthood as well, which is seen as a very un-Scottish move.
I was going to ask you about that off air. When it comes to being knighted, I didn't know foreigners could be knighted. And I mean, even though Scotland's connected, it's still a foreign country. I didn't know what the rules on that are.
I think if you're in the United Kingdom, you can be knighted, and maybe if you're in the Commonwealth, so maybe I don't know what.
Has there ever been an American who was knighted?
No. That seems like it might be a nice story in itself, the American who got knighted.
Yeah. Sounds like a Disney movie.
Not counting Charles Barkley, because he knighted himself.
Well,
I don't think he counts.
Say, how drunk was he when he probably did that?
I don't know. If you just start, like I said, if you just start calling yourself Sir, or even Mr., like Mr. T, I mean, you can't say, like, if you become famous, you can't say, no, that's not your name.
Maybe you just fell on the sword.
Yeah. Like we were talking off air, neither of us really read up on the biography of Ian Fleming, but he was in the Naval Intelligence Division. So the James Bond stories, which is why I think they became so popular, is because they have that element of realism that only someone, even when you read in Casino Royale, his first novel, you can see that in the novel that it's like, well, this seems like somebody who actually experienced how things work. how much of that he fudged and kind of added stuff to. I would imagine he would add just more fun elements to make it more readable. But he even like the technical stuff, yeah, they were pretty entertaining. Just going off before we even go into it, what was your rating of Casino Royale? Because I said when I first started it, I had trouble getting into it because I was just kind of bored. But then I ended up really liking the novel, minus like the misogyny and the, like you said, the rapey James Bond tropes that apparently are still, you could have those. I don't know, because he's cool. I guess it's fine. If you have Daniel Craig James Bond, he's kind of buff, so I guess that's okay if you're kind of a creep. But he, in the actual original Casino Royale, he had a scar on his face, and I just got more of a psychopath vibe from him than a suave martini drinking gentleman.
Yeah, definitely like just like a couple small things away from just becoming completely unhinged. Yeah. Like at any moment.
And then obviously the big torture scene in the novel, we both discussed off air, from the movie Casino, the Daniel Craig Casino Royale, because I think they did 2 of those.
Well, this is what
the licensing was, I think it's like Eon Productions or something like that has the licensing for James Bond. And they did all the movies, but Casino Royale, which is his first novel, they didn't have the rights to. So I think that was like a TV show, and I'm not sure if that was a different movie.
There's been like 20-something movies, right?
24, 26.
And there's only like 14 novels.
Yeah, we had a couple repeats. They had that.
Well, famously, they made Thunderball twice.
Yeah.
Casino Royale was made as a spoof in 1967 or so. So like in the height of Bond pandemonium, when it was a new hit and Sean Connery was the sexiest actor on earth. I think so. About 5 years after the first one, and it's this big sort of mad 60s movie with like every 60s actor in it. There's like David Niven, Woody Allen, Ursula Andress from Doctor No, Orson Welles is in it.
How did they pull that off?
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's insane. But if you think about it, there's a few films in the 60s that are like that. They're these just massive marquee films that just stink of acid.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think the joke, it's years since I've seen it, but the joke is that everyone is James Bond or variations of James Bond. So Woody Allen is Jimmy Bond. David Niven is like the typical English James Bond. But then a lot of the, like Ursula Andress, it's just, it's a big sort of like knockabout thing. I'd forgotten about that, about the rights. That's probably, So they had the rights to all of the other books, but not Casino Royale. So they only just 2006 got around to it.
Damn, it was that old.
Yeah.
Man, I'm getting old then. Seems like that was just out recently. Because from what I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie. That one seemed pretty faithful to the novel, which I was surprised, like with the torture scene.
Yeah.
Neither of us actually thought that was in the original novel.
I just thought that was something for the movie.
Yeah, that seemed like that was very brutal, and I didn't think that was going to be in the novel. And now I'm kind of wondering, did Ian Fleming never go through something similar? Because that sounded terrible, and it was described in a very cringe-inducing way. I was like, oh.
I think that scene is pretty much Ian Fleming's idea of a nice night in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, he said he was a kinky gentleman. I did not read up on any of that, so I don't know what his sexual fantasies were, per se.
He was. Yeah. Yeah, he was well into that kind of stuff. It's funny, I think on like he describes Le Chiffre as flagellant on like the first page. And it does have that kind of weird stuff they want to do, Can
you repeat that? You turned into a robot there.
Oh, sorry. I said on about the first page, he describes, who does he describe? Le Chiffre as flagellant. And I was just saying that it has all of the kind of whiff of a first novel in which a writer just sort of writes down all the stuff he'd like to do, before he
I can see that.
Just sort of puts down his fantasies. And I think he as good as admitted that. He said of his early ones that they were adolescent tripe, which is maybe a bit harsh. But and then he also said he said something like it was I don't know, but he was very down on it. And you mentioned Chandler earlier. I'm not sure if we were recording by then, but if you've heard that amazing interview between Chandler and Fleming on Chandler's 70th, you can tell
checked
Fleming
that out yet.
Oh, it's great. It's well worth a watch. They're both pissed, and Fleming's sort of playing the interviewer, but you can tell he considers himself the far inferior writer.
I noticed, I I actually asked in that classic literature group we're in before I read Casino Royale what people's opinions on... I don't remember if I asked if it was between him and Chandler, but that's what ended up coming up was Chandler was the far superior writer to Ian Fleming, and a lot of people were either very harsh on the James Bond novels, saying they're very boring, or they were, the greatest novels. Yeah. I think it's more of a genre thing people like, because that is like the first real spy thrillers that I think came out. But reading this, like when I went into it, the first few chapters, I was like, like I said, I was kind of bored with it. And then we got into like the Baccarat talk and stuff, but it actually did pick up. And I didn't think, because me and Spencer were talking before, where when we read The Big Sleep, Chandler, where I thought his writing was better, there were times where I kind of got a little bit lost in what he was talking about, versus Ian Fleming, where everything's very direct and this is what's happening. I would like a little more beauty to the language he used. I enjoyed the storytelling. Like, I thought he did a decent job moving the story forward, though I did think it was a little strange that he had the big climax of the torture scene, and then the story kind of really drops off into just what James Bond's doing as he's recovering and stuff. Yeah. Like, there wasn't really any action after that, so that was kind of... But again, first novel, I could kind of see maybe... I forget who it was, but a writer friend... Actually, it might have been the guy who wrote the other James Bond books. Yeah, Raymond Benson. I'm just going to paraphrase off of this here. I'll just read this. The author Raymond Benson, who later wrote a series of Bond novels, noted that Fleming's books fall into two stylistic periods. Those books written between 53 and 60 tend to concentrate on mood, which I definitely got with the Casino Royale, character development and plot advancement, while those released between 61 and 66 incorporate more detail and imagery. Benson argues that Fleming had become a master storyteller by the time he wrote Thunderball in 1961. I haven't read any of the other James Bond. I actually read some of Benson's Bond novels when I was a kid, which I didn't know were different from me and Fleming's, because I was like 7 years old or something. Which probably not appropriate to read at that age, if it had the same amount of lady romancing, we'll put it. But I thought that was interesting, that he was able to progress, because some of those writers back then, they kind of stayed the same throughout their career.
Because I was wondering too, because like other writers we've read around that time, like H.P. Lovecraft and the Conan guy, like
Robert E. Howard,
because they always had like their kind of rough and shady parts of their stories too, but it always seemed like it got worse. As more stories came out, they got more kind of blunt and stuff, and I wonder like with the
well, they were Depression era pulp writers versus because we both were under the impression that the Bond first novel was written in men's magazines. I was not able to corroborate that, so I don't think it was. I think that was just his first novel. So
that's just the rumor that I always heard.
But I don't know how he. Because, like I said, I didn't read his biography or anything, so I don't know how he actually got into writing novels outside of the service. So that'd be interesting to dive into, actually. But yeah, so the Casino Royale, though, you start with that, which, like I said, I wouldn't say it was the best kind of spy novel I've even read in my time, but I would read more. So if he does progress as a writer versus some other writers of the period, and I can't judge Raymond Chandler because we only read The Big Sleep, so I don't know if he got better as a writer. Like Robert E. Howard, you brought him up. His writing seemed pretty much the same throughout all those stories we read. So the fact that Ian Fleming was able to improve as a storyteller specifically, that makes me kind of want to read his future work to see how the James Bond stories transform from maybe... I don't know if they're all misogynistic like that one. Again, it was 50s Britain, so that's... I mean, I only go off the Austin Powers caricatures, but I would imagine that was a kind of a... In the 50s would probably be more misogynistic. I would think the 70s were probably more of like a hippie time, weren't they?
Well, it's the hippie decade. I'm not sure about master storyteller, to go back to that bit, but they definitely do improve. I think it's interesting that you bring up the pulp writers, because I think a lot of them started with like raw talent, like Chandler. People who could have been poets. Like he was a frustrated poet and then found himself writing crime stories and just had a genius for it. Whereas I think Ian Fleming hadn't really thought about writing, wrote his first novel in about 2 months in Jamaica, basically as a retired man. So it's essentially like
just
a
hobby.
careerist. Yeah. He thought it was trash, but then he, instead of sort of being all youth and talent, he just stuck with it and kind of ground out his craft kind of thing.
Well, that gives us hope.
You right?
We could,
Well,
grind away at shittily written fiction until we get a character that's very popular for no reason.
We might be okay for like the last like 15 to 20 years of our life. We might get to
if I'm at any point in my life, if I'm sitting in Jamaica on the beach writing a novel, I'm happy. Like, that's awesome. Of course,
well, exactly. If you start from paradise, how good is your novel going to be?
Yeah. You think about all the starving artists, and then here's Ian Fleming on the beach, probably sipping fancy drinks.
Yeah, with someone's wife who he's banging.
Well, I definitely, because you brought up how some of the pulp writers like Lovecraft, Chandler, they were more literary. Even like Robert E. Howard, he's writing fanciful, fantastic Conan adventures, but it was very literary the way he was writing. I didn't get that from the James Bond novel at all. That wasn't a very not very poetic, not a lot of metaphors. Like I said, the language was pretty basic, more along the lines of maybe even below a Hemingway as far as the use of like just a bigger vocabulary or imagery. But as far as just like a storytelling perspective, I felt like maybe it wouldn't compare to stories now necessarily, but it did well enough that you were interested in the story throughout.
Well, I didn't say like one of the things I heard about what made Bond so popular in the books and the movies is that like where they take place.
The locations.
And especially since back then, like, you had, that could be the first time anybody's ever seen any of these things. Mm-hmm. To where, like, now you can just go, you can just Google, like, the Casino Royale or wherever it's at, like, you know what I mean? And get, like, a virtual tour or whatever. It takes some of that, like, mysticism, like, out of it.
Well, when I read this, I got this strong impression that Fleming was kind of the creator of the Eastern, European, Mediterranean, and even Italian villain tropes that we have in movies now. Like either the homosexual or asexual villain is another trope I think could be attributed to the Bond stories, because before that I'd never really noticed those in movies or anything. But because the Bond villains, even just from the movies and then what we read in Casino Royale, it's always like kind of more of a feminine kind of guy.
Yeah.
And again, usually like Middle East or Eastern European or something like that. And it's pretty interesting to see how that trope has not really broken. Even in movies now, the bad guy always has to have, at the very least, the English accent.
Yeah.
For some reason. It's like that's the height of evil is you have to have a posh English accent or something like that. I don't know why. And then obviously if you're like, Italian or something, then you're really in trouble. You're the ultimate.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. There's every villain in a Bond film has to have a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, he's from somewhere foreign, he's got a hook, he's lost an eye, he's
has a cat.
He's got a birthmark. Yeah, and he's got a cat. Funnily enough, with the film, they added a thing. Le Chiffre's bleeds from the eye, which he doesn't in the book.
I actually really like that. I thought that I always forget that guy's name. He's a really good actor that played him.
Mads Mikkelsen.
There you go. I thought he did a really good job in that, because when I read the book, I didn't actually get this. Like, I didn't picture that guy as the character, but I really liked his portrayal of that role. And like I said, the most recent Casino Royale Bond movie followed the book pretty closely. But I think the changes they did make were actually beneficial to the story.
Yeah.
Like when Bond's getting tortured and he talks about the guy scratching his balls.
Yeah.
Like that just gave it more of an entertainment feel versus just like complete and utter destruction of a man's nether regions. Like, that's very grim. But you can at least have a little bit of stoicism in there. You feel a little better about what's happening.
It's funny how clear he wants to make it in the book that his balls are fine. He clearly can't quite say your testicles are intact. He has Bond worry about his impotence, which is surprisingly deep for a Bond film. But then the Doctor is like, yeah, you should make a full recovery. And it's almost like he leans in and raises his eyebrows, like, full recovery.
It's very ham-fisted.
Don't worry, reader.
Well, he couldn't see down there either. When he was in the hospital, they had like a tarp so he couldn't see his nether regions.
I was gonna say, like, you talked about, like, after the big torture scene, it kind of goes on to this, like just this kind of flat kind of, but like that's basically what the rest of the book was about. Was basically Bond's balls and asshole healing up.
Don't you, when you see that in the film, that scene is too weird to be like approved by. There's no way that came up in a script writing session.
No,
that is from a fucked up novelist.
100%.
Well, like we were talking about off air a couple days ago, like because like in the movie, it's just like really thick, tied up like rope. But in the book, it's like it's traption. Like you have to like hit a lever or like step on something.
It was like a thing that beats curtains or rugs or something.
I kind of just got a flash of
carpet beater. Yeah.
Like I almost
Mediterranean carpet beater, which is just this huge, cumbersome ball smasher. Apparently,
I was almost thinking of something that like would be on the end of Max from Always Sunny in Philadelphia's bike, kind of.
A giant dildo.
Can you imagine being Ian Fleming's maid and reading that book and then thinking, fucking hell, I cleaned that guy's carpet beater?
I would probably move. I'd probably get another job. Like, I wouldn't want to work for him anymore. That'd be very disturbing. Yeah, because once you read that, you're like, I don't know. Who's thinking of this kind of stuff? But if he's doing that for fun, which he might have been.
And he never, like, reflects on it, does he? He never sort of thinks, that was weird. Like, why didn't he try and take my thumbs off or break my kneecaps or dangle me over a pool of crocodiles or,
well, let's go
straight to the balls.
Let's go in the time machine here. If you're reading this in 1953, I feel like that's extra disturbing because what fiction or movies or anything at the time were depicting having your testicles smashed over and over for the period of 1 hour. And what I thought was really disturbing personally was how he described how it eventually turns into pleasure when you're getting tortured like that. So if you stick it out, it'll eventually feel good. And and then it'll go bad again. Yeah. But I was like, that seems like something from experience. Like that's the only way you would know that.
Well, then he gets really.
What's even more crass is he he reports that as the testimony of people who've been tortured in Japanese POW camps, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Like he goes like, oh yeah, Bond thought to himself, Dickie, who was in the Japanese POW camp, said, yeah, it's bad at first, but then it starts to get sexy. Like,
and why was he having that conversation with a guy? That's weird too. Like, why was Bond talking about that with somebody?
Yeah, he was debriefing him.
Yeah. But that whole scene, which I wasn't really expecting, bled into him in the hospital and the whole thing about being impotent or sterile or not even be able to have sex again, basically. That was like a big deal to Ian Fleming, apparently, was to make sure Bond can do it again. Yeah. And he's like, oh, is he really? Because if you can't, you're not a man anymore. So again, with the very, the masculine nature of the Bond franchise, I guess if he can't have sex, he's just not a stone cold killer anymore. He might as well just retire. And then we go into the whole scene with the lady who immediately before he even meets her calls her a bitch.
Yeah. Which
I thought was strange because usually you at least meet somebody before you would have such a harsh judgment of them. But he did not like the lady. And then, of course, because she was beautiful, he immediately is smitten, but also does not want to really listen to her. And doesn't seem like a guy I'd want to hang out with, really.
His relationship with her turns on a dime. So it's all lovey-dovey, and like as soon as she does something that he just doesn't like answers wrong or looks a weird way, it just turns, and then it just turns again real quick to the lovey-dovey stuff again.
Well, spoiler alert for somebody who's not read or watched the movie. She ends up dying because she's a double agent, and I like how pretty much the whole summation of the novel is, fuck that bitch. Like, that was the whole, like, after he wanted to marry her, he was in love with her because apparently he always falls in love with these ladies, and then they die, so you probably shouldn't do that anymore. But, the whole thing was, she was kind of a bitch anyway, so she sucked.
Double agent,
yeah, she had to come in. So that was a little weird. The whole, it's almost like kind of was written like epilogue, like it was after the fact because the whole adventure was done. And then they just go to like a remote island for vacation. And then they're almost like a honeymoon. Like they're going to get married at some point. And then everything just falls apart because he catches her on the phone. she's secretly talking on the phone.
He goes psycho-possessive boyfriend on her. He is very 0 to 60. He goes from calling her a bitch to wanting to shag her, to not wanting to shag her because it's unprofessional, to running away with... Oh, no, calling her a bitch again for getting kidnapped, then running away with her, about to propose marriage to her, thinking she's a bitch again, loving her,
wasn't there...
letting her die. And then the last word of the novel is bitch.
Yeah. That's what I said. He pretty much just fuck that bitch at the end of the novel. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty much the tone. I also thought it was a little strange because I think there's one scene when the bad guys capture her, they put her skirt up over her head and like wrap her up or tie her up or something. And Bond sees this and immediately feels a twinge in his legs. A little bit of erotic feeling seeing this lady in this position.
Well, you remember at first right before that, he's like, because it takes a while for her to come back, and he's like, if she gets kidnapped, like, fuck her, like, but then
he goes to save her anyway. I don't know. Bond's a little bit of a creep.
He'll save her as long as she's like in bondage. I think that's Fleming coming through, the true
That's
Fleming.
what I got. He seemed to enjoy that kind of thing.
Which, I mean, that makes more sense if, like, if in the books it's like, because, you know, in the movies there's always, like, these elaborate torture traps and, like, and things. So if they do that in the books, too, like, that makes a whole little bit more sense now.
Yeah. Then he flicks rubber bands at his taint. Like, really? Does he? Like, that seems a little harsh.
He must have been a nightmare on set, just every day turning up to the new film. Yeah, it's a really good scene, but do you think he should be, like, tied up and, you know, having his nipples, like, tweezed with electric?
Where's the jumper cables?
Not enough clamps. Not enough clamps.
Practice on me, I'll show you what I mean.
He goes and sits. No. This is not how you react when somebody hits you in the testicles with a giant rope. Move out of the way. Here, let me show you. Swing it harder.
Where's your erection?
Oh man, that's just kind of that's a little bit icky.
Well, that's like right before he gets ready to pass out, he describes like the huge pool of blood that just keep on growing from underneath of him. Like,
seems like a little more damage than you would think. I never had my genitals.
His balls are totally fine.
Yeah, he recovered within 3 weeks or whatever. He was
his balls bounced back right back.
Surprisingly high bar of Ian Fleming, because he describes for a very long section about Bond worrying about not being able to have sex again. And then when Bond does have sex to, you know, reinvigorate his manhood, he just glosses over it. He doesn't actually describe. I thought he was going to have a hot sex scene, but he didn't.
Well, because it just would have been like a normal sex scene,
which would be very vanilla for him. Yeah, Fleming probably would have been bored with that. Like,
I'm sure if they were like held hostage in like a cell somewhere,
that would be different.
Where there were rats or something,
tie her up. Yeah, no, just a regular sex scene. And then he laid on top of her and wiggled around, and then he came to fruition. And next scene.
If Vesper hadn't killed herself, there was a matter of weeks before Bond suggested bringing in a German with a whip into the bedroom. I brought the Schiffer back just to spice things up. He's fine.
Have you read any of the following James Bond novels? Because I'm very interested to see how these themes come up in those novels as well.
Well, I don't think they go away, but this one is pretty
right off the bat.
Yeah. I have read them years ago, and I do remember they do get better. They do like...
No, are they
like smoothes it out.
Do they ever like is there any like callback or anything in between like the novels? Because I know like the movies, one of the big things are like the debates are like, are they all the same Bond? Or are they different Bonds? Like, you know what I mean? But I'd imagine in the novels they're all the same guy. But I don't know if they had any like progressing like you know, or anything carried over from like, you know, from story to story.
I'm trying to remember if I think Vesper gets mentioned at some point. I mean, the crew is like, you know, his MI5 team are the same. They recur. Q section gets a brief mention in this one, but I don't think we meet.
No,
Q.
we just have M.
We just have M. But it's definitely one James Bond. It's not multiple 00 agents like the parody film. Funny you mentioned Austin Powers. It's watching the Bond films. You wonder why anyone thought you'd need to make a parody. Mm-hmm. Like they're already outrageous parodies of spy films.
Ridiculous to begin with.
Yeah.
Personally, I think the James Bond era, like James Bond franchise, took off so well was because, one, the names are cool.
Yeah.
Like, even the lady names, like Vesper, like, that's just kind of a cool name. Like, you don't hear the name like that. So he was good at coming up with names, and then just the, the whole 007 mythos that he explains immediately, because obviously there could be other 00s.
Yeah.
You just become a 00 by killing a couple people. So...
It seemed very easy.
Yeah. He just killed a Japanese guy in New York. Oh, there you go. You're 00 now.
And one of them was just a number cruncher. It's like he didn't fight him. He just shot him through a window.
Yeah, it's like...
There must be so many people in prison who are 00s. Just
but
DUIs.
But if he's 007, how many are there? That's one thing I would like to see more. I mean, I'm sure there's very shitty fan fiction out there that goes into that, but it's obviously 000 through 6. I want 000. That's what we need.
True, the original.
The original Bond. It's just Ian Fleming.
It's just some old guy.
It's just Ian Fleming in Jamaica whipping somebody's testicles.
000's testicles. Or maybe 000 has 3 testicles.
Yeah.
That's where it started. Just to go on to names, though, it's funny how, like, this is the first Bond girl, and she's called Vesper Lind. You're right. It's a pretty cool name. Soon we get to Pussy Galore.
That's a better name.
Yeah. That's
a classy name, yeah. Because if you don't name your kid Pussy Galore, I mean, that's just...
It's like he just sat down and went, I need a synonym for, like, an excess of or surplus minge.
You have too much...
Like, far too much vagina.
Way too much. Yeah, that's literally like one step away from Anita Cox. Like, that's not very far away. Yeah. What's your name? Hugh Ass? Stupid. Yeah, when you get to Pussy Galore, that's probably the height of parody for the Bond franchise. Oh, Octopussy too. I don't know why that name came about.
Now, is that just a one name, like a Cher, or is it like first name Pussy, last name Galore?
I think it's Pussy Galore. So your first name's Pussy. Maybe it's short for something like Pussifa or something. I don't know.
Mr. and Mrs. Galore, you've had a beautiful baby girl. What would you like to call her?
I feel like if I read... Which novel was that from? Which one was Pussy Galore?
Goldfinger.
Goldfinger, which is a great one, too. Well, actually, Goldfinger, wasn't that one of Ian Fleming's operations that he was in?
That was GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Brown Eye. That's a different one.
I can't remember the details of it, but you're right what you're saying earlier. His knowledge of naval intelligence, that kind of thing. And also, I think he worked with the CIA or just did sort of co-op missions with them. So obviously the Americans play a part in this one with Felix and whatnot.
Well, let me ask you this. Who is more of a badass? Ian Fleming or Christopher Lee?
Oh, Christopher Lee. Definitely. I don't think really Ian Fleming's much of a badass at all. Like, I think he's a...
kinky bastard. Yep, he's muted. You're frozen. Uh-oh. He's just speaking into the wind. You froze. Can't hear you.
It's all right. I got it.
Okay, now you're good.
I stopped.
Okay. We just see your mouth moving, but no words are coming out.
Yeah, I know. It happened earlier with you guys where I was just like, I'll just wait it out.
I'll just smile and nod.
Yeah, just smile and nod, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Great
And
point. Now here's
the
something
next thing I
completely
say,
separate.
or I'll just repeat what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, another thing.
Another thing, isn't Pussy Galore a hilarious name?
And no, Chris, I mean, not to discredit Ian Fleming's service, but he worked behind a desk, I think, for most of his time.
It's not very exciting.
No, and we can't forget that he wrote his novels effectively in retirement. Christopher Lee's definitely more of a badass. Christopher Lee's did extraordinary, strange things throughout his life.
He also did death metal, I believe. He has metal albums, yeah, which is badass.
I think he released an album like in his 80s. I don't know. I don't know how old he was when he died, but yeah.
He also, I remember, in Lord of the Rings, I believe he's supposed to get stabbed in the back, and Peter Jackson's like, okay, and then you gotta scream. And he's like, actually, when you stab somebody in the back, they don't scream, they gasp, and he describes how the air comes out of your lungs, and then Peter Jackson's like, I'm gonna believe you here. I'm just gonna let you. You would know, so I'm just gonna. Coming from experience, I think you would know better than I. So go ahead. You do.
I believe you, Dracula.
Complete sidebar on Christopher Lee. He does a really good reading, which you can find on YouTube, of The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh,
because there's 3 of my personal favorites readings of Edgar Allan Poe's. The Raven would be Christopher Lee. Actually, my number 1 is James Earl Jones. That's a very good one. And then there's also Christopher Walken, which actually is pretty good. Because, another sidebar, really going off track, I saw that Christopher Walken starred in an Irish movie within the last 10 years, I believe. So older Christopher Walken, extra Christopher Walken. And he kind of does an Irish accent. If you were... if an Irish man... had Irish parents but was born in New York. It was very bizarre. I don't know the name of that movie, but it's worth looking up. I just watched the clips on YouTube, but it was really funny. It was like Christopher Walken doing an Irish accent, and it wasn't well at all.
Now, when he reads The Raven, is he full like Christopher Walken as?
Yeah, but when it comes to like
ratting at my door,
with the poetry style, it actually works, which I thought was surprising. So I kind of wanted him to just go through like Shakespeare sonnets and everything. Like I just want a whole thing before Christopher Walken dies of him doing those. But yeah, Christopher Lee's Raven was very well done. Also his Dylan Thomas Rage Against the Light was Do Not Go Gentle Into the Night was a very good reading as well. So we're about 40 minutes in. James Bond, what do you give it? I'll be generous. I'll say 4 out of 5 stars.
Yeah. I mean, I want to check out the next, the next novel in the series. So
honestly, it'd be more of a 3.5 probably, but I'll give it a solid 4 because I did enjoy the story. It wasn't as misogynistic as I
thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously there, but and then because this takes place in like France, doesn't it? Mostly.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, because the Franks.
So I didn't. Like, you don't really get too many, like, any kind of people of color or anything. So I don't know if Ian Fleming had a lot of racism elements, kind of like, like Howard or some of the other things we've read. So I can't judge the Bond series on that, but I think it was a solid story. It was entertaining enough.
Especially considering being, like, the first thing that he wrote, probably.
Yeah, the first novels. That was obviously, it stood the test of time. Again, as we discussed, I don't know how they keep making James Bond movies. With the current lens,
I suspect we're about to see a complete change. Like it's, I think, I don't want to sound cliched, but I think maybe time's up on James Bond.
Well,
they've been edging towards an acceptable Bond for a few years, and I think with this new one that's been long delayed, I think they've done a complete overhaul of like get more women in there that aren't just sex objects.
Yeah,
and also get more women involved in making the film.
And the women,
I think it'll probably change a lot. Yeah,
the women always tend to be the downfall too. Like they're the catalyst for disaster in every James Bond movie. I would like to see that change too, personally. I honestly like the idea of Idris Elba as James Bond.
Yeah,
I think that would be a cool change.
And say over on the other side of the pond, do people get upset at the idea of there being like the female, like the Jenny Bond? Because I know, like, I talk to people over here and they're just like, fuck that's dumb. And I'm just like, first of all, like,
I can see like Emily Blunt or something doing a James Bond. I mean, I could kind of get those criticisms just because of the source material, but you can change it. It doesn't have to be. It's not like it's he has to be a black-haired white Englishman.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you just keep him as an Englishman, it's fine. But like I said, like Idris Elba, like that.
No, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I wouldn't even.
And the thing is, I think most people have quite bought into the idea of it being a code name.
It makes sense after how many movies and books and stuff came out. He could just easily be 007 James Bond is just the name. It's not a person. So you could have a Jane Bond technically. I mean, that's a whole topic for another day. But I think just the forced diversity is, I think, what people are opposed to. Versus if it's just like the best actor for the role. So we'll see what they come up with. No. But yeah, with this last James Bond movie, it's still unreleased. I don't have high hopes for the franchise.
In the novels, is he as like, because well known, because like in the movies, he's like this world-known secret spy. Like he's a secret spy, but everybody knows, hey, that's
James
Bond, 007, James Bond right over there.
Yeah. Yeah.
feel like that blows your cover immediately.
Yeah,
I know.
Do they like in the stories? Do you remember if he like is like as like has such a street cred, or do they like actually have him be more of like a secret agent?
Yeah, I think that does come from the books because Smersh, the organization that we find in Casino Royale, recur. I should have said that earlier. Like that's another thing that recurs throughout, and his entanglements with Smersh are a running thing. So if you're a Smersh agent, you know who James Bond is because one of them has met him. So yeah, in the books there are people who go, you know, he's in undercover somewhere, and someone goes, "Oh, hey, it's James Bond." Mm. He's also, you know, telling everyone his name, which never really gets addressed.
Yeah, every time Bond, James Bond,
and like.
But it's like, so what is your code? Is your code name 007, or is your code name James Bond? Is your real name like Frank? You know, Billy Jacobs.
Yeah, sausage galore.
Sausage party. Yeah. And this is my wife, Pussy Galore.
I do like that he created his own drink. That's a pretty cool move.
Yeah,
creating your own drink. And just making people think it's a good idea to create your own cocktail. Because he had...
But again, isn't that kind of like an 8-year-old thing?
Yeah.
Like, the thing I got in this book is he goes on about, he's like food. And he talks to Vesper like, oh, I just like ordering really, really nice food. It's just this weird thing I have of like really wanting to eat stuff that tastes delicious.
I don't like eating dirt.
Really expensive.
Yeah, there was that one scene when they had like 3 meals in one sitting.
And he kind of talks to her when it comes to the food and stuff. Like she's, I don't know, like not that he's superior to her, but it's almost like he's humble bragging about his the way he eats and stuff. And it was like, you're a fucking secret agent. I mean, do we really need to hear about your fancy caviar and stuff? I don't think it's that important.
Yeah.
And then obviously he's a severe alcoholic and smokes at least how many packs? I think it actually states how many packs a day, and it was a ridiculous amount of cigarettes.
I think he's on his 70th at one point.
It was it was like
of the day.
70 cigarettes a day. Yeah, because he's just constantly smoking, which is obviously.
And of course, he could run around and, you know, fight and stuff after 70 cigarettes. Could run up a hill.
Just because we're talking about the drinks, I do not think the movie version of Bond that switched to Heineken is a good move.
Yeah.
Like, I get the whole blatant sponsorship of Heineken, but James Bond ain't drinking no beer. He's a martini man. With his fancy vodka and his 8-year-old intellect of selecting which kind of...
And if he was going to drink a beer, it wouldn't be Heineken.
No, probably not. It'd probably be Stella Artois.
In this one, he's such a toff. Like, he's talking about the most expensive champagne and, an unknown brand of champagne. So posh it has no name, or so posh even he doesn't know what it is. So, yeah, the idea that this Bond would be drinking Heineken, I think it would... He'd take a cyanide pill before he had a Heineken.
Yeah,
exactly. It didn't make any sense that they... clearly corporate sponsorship. Also, I found the gambling scene to be a little ridiculous when it got to the guy with the gun in his back.
Yeah.
Like, he just falls down.
Why haven't we talked about this?
Yeah. Silly old Bond just falling down at the table. This young guy just had him, the heat got to him or whatever.
Had the vapors.
The vapors. You know, you get on a good gambling streak. Sometimes you just completely collapse in your chair, and the guy that's standing behind you runs off. That was ridiculous.
Well, we haven't said the best bit, which is this is all prompted by someone walking up behind him as he's sitting at a gambling table, pushing a gun in between the cleft of his buttocks.
Yeah.
And basically saying, you know, I'll count to 10, and then I'm going to blow your ass off.
Anywhere to shoot a man.
Right between the cheeks.
I feel like that, I mean, it would hurt really bad, but that I don't know if that would be fatal. Like, that seems a very weird choice.
That seems like that's the perfect time to have, like, the Hank Hill butt. Like, less chance of...
Less damage.
Yeah.
I don't know. See, I feel like if you had a big donkey, you would have more meat to suck up the bullet. To be as scientific as possible. Yeah, I felt that was ridiculous. But you know what this book did? I mentioned it to you before. It actually made Baccarat not sound as boring as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because in that classic literature book club, they were telling me how they talk about the Baccarat, and it was super boring. But he actually described it in a way where now I know how to play Baccarat, kind of. Like, I understand the rules, I guess. And I didn't really see, like... It did seem like he went over the top with the rules and stuff of the Baccarat. They just, they played the cards and kind of made it like a high stakes game. And obviously he gets a gun in the butt cheeks, which is a little ridiculous. But it was an entertaining scene. I didn't think it was that boring.
I like how nobody noticed that either. Like, they're surrounded by
if
people.
You're playing for millions of dollars, I feel like people would be crowded around. But it was 1 a.m.
Well, no, what they talk about, because Visser and the U.S. guy, they were like up top, like watching them. I think like they had a whole crowd.
Can we talk about the CIA agent and how he was completely useless?
Hey, he gave him some extra money.
Yeah, but he didn't notice the guy with the what was it, like a cane with a gun in it or whatever? Like,
well, no, he's a dumb American. He's just good enough for money.
He was just over there to...
I mean, never mind the gun. What if you like watching James Bond, knowing he's your guy, and just suddenly there's like an old guy whispering in his ear?
Yeah, maybe
never
go
mind
over...
seeing a gun. You'd be like, what's going on with that guy?
If anything, if you didn't see the gun, it at least looked like he has his finger in his ass.
Yeah.
Maybe he just thought he likes that kind
Bond
of thing.
looks startled.
His lips quivering a little.
Not a sweat.
Your arse today, Bond, or balls tomorrow.
If you had to choose ball smashing for an hour or bullet to the butthole, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if we go by the Bond method, he did recover.
Yeah.
The testicles smash.
Yeah.
But it definitely described like how he was all scarred down there. Like he was very scarred in the nether region. So I'm thinking it couldn't be so after this we just get like a lady goes with Bond and it's like, oh my god, it's like a topographical map.
Well, that's why they die at the end of each stories, because he has sex with them. They see his penis and they're like, ugh. And he's like, well, fuck you then.
Like if he was like with a blind chick and she's feeling around down there, like Braille, who knows what that spells out? That's terrible.
No, scars are dashing. He's got a very dashing scrotum.
As character.
I feel like at some point during that process they would kind of suck up in you a little bit, but he's so masculine, that's the problem.
Yeah, he's so...
It just wouldn't.
Yeah, it just wouldn't. Because he was enjoying it.
I'm actually kind of surprised the thing didn't break against his testicles.
Well, if I had to answer that question, I definitely would probably... I don't know, man. Versus one shot between the butt.
Yeah. Because like he's just shooting between.
But what if it's the spine? Then you might be paralyzed.
Well, that's the thing. It is against the spine. So it's basically it's going to take out your ass and paralyze you. And let's not forget, the bullet could continue through your ass and take out your balls anyway.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah.
So I would take the ball treatment and hope that I get Bond's look.
Oh, and
or a dashing scrotum.
And as we learned, after a certain point, it starts to feel good.
Well, I'm going to say, what if you go through this harrowing experience of having your testicles smashed over and over, and in the movie, he was really wailing that fucking thing. Yeah. What if you come to enjoy that? Now,
that's your thing.
Yeah, like, unbeknownst to you, that was a kink you never knew you had, and now after this, you need ladies to smash your genitals with heavy objects.
Yeah.
I guess there's worse things in this world. Still better than being paralyzed.
Yeah.
And he won the card game, so that was what was really important. So he won the card game and kind of got the girl. Now, do you agree or disagree? Was she a bitch?
No.
She had a really She had good motivation.
Yeah.
For why she was a double agent. It's because a man she loved was he working for Smarsh, or was he like just indebted to them?
I think he got captured.
And
he was an RAF pilot. He was Polish, and he was an RAF pilot, and he'd been captured. And I don't think she was. I think in the film she's still in a relationship with him, kind of.
See, the film versions make the women characters so superficial that I feel like you almost forget about them after you watch the movie. Because every Bond movie I remember, I don't ever remember the ladies, like the love interest, or in this case, like a major character, but you almost kind of forget about the character because they don't really care.
They don't come off well. But I think that one, as far as film Bond girls go, that one's pretty good. Mm-hmm. But it's a pretty low bar for Bond girls, to be fair.
Didn't she jump out of a building or something at the end of that?
No, she gets like trapped in an elevator that then sinks into Venice, believably.
That's terrible. But yeah, she actually did have surprisingly good character motivations for why she... Actually, I thought the fact that she fell in love with James Bond was very, not just cliche, but kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Because if she was in love with this Polish guy so much that she was willing to become a double agent to save his life, why would she really give a fuck about James Bond? But she...
Also, Bond is a dickhead.
Yeah, he's a big dickhead. But apparently he also has a big dick head because even through the torture, he was able to perform...
Well, because they do bring her in the room at the towards the end, so
she saw that thing.
Yeah,
that mangled hunk of flesh and extra elbow
and
skin
suddenly appeared.
What if it enlarged it?
I mean,
what if that would be?
You think it would be swollen for a while?
What if the actual way to enlarge your member is to bash it for an hour straight with a rug beater? Would you go?
And
through
now
that?
you're a 00.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we're about an hour in, so we should probably end this episode on that. James Bond, definitely I would say worth the read for anybody who's, even if you've never read spy fiction, but you're into, you want to kind of get into the genre. I think going back to the classic James Bond would be a good start. Obviously, we have like Splinter Cell series and things like the more modern kind of, I don't know.
Oh, the Tom Clancy stuff.
Yeah, like I was trying to think if Tom Clancy's actually considered like spy thrillers.
I mean, I think he dabbles in all those little kind of sub-genres of that kind of stuff.
See, when it comes to like this kind of fiction stuff, I'm definitely more the Raymond Chandler noir detective versus like the spy. I don't really care about the spy stuff too much. But like I said, this was a fun story, and I would actually read some more James Bond books. I would recommend checking them out, at least if you were if you like the movies. It seems like, natural progression.
And they're all pretty short, I do believe.
Yeah, this was like 150 pages or something. It wasn't very... I didn't tell you, I told Spencer, the ebook version I got was terrible.
Mine was fine.
Really? Yeah, I got the same one he did, but for some reason mine was only $3 and his was $7. So I downloaded it, and I would say every 4 paragraphs it had a big hyperlink that took up like half the page, and that was really annoying. But all the French in the book, whatever formatting they use, the symbols were changed into either spaces or just like random symbols, like like the accents on the letters and stuff. They were changed into weird symbols, like a big square or something. So it completely messed up any French. Like I just couldn't read it. It was terrible. So I thought that was just the edition, but apparently Spencer got the good edition, even though it was the same one I got. So I don't know. I think
mine was vintage.
I should have got a physical copy.
Mine was alright. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure you could probably find a collection with all of them that's not too expensive.
Well, see, that's the thing was I wanted to get the ebook for cheap because if I liked James Bond, I was probably going to buy just the collection of James Bond at some point. Because it was like $100-something. You get the whole
e-collection.
Yeah, or something like that. So that might be worth looking into. I don't... Over here, some of those might actually be public domain now. Well, even Casino Royale is actually public domain. You can get on like Project Gutenberg. You can get a free copy. I just couldn't get it on my Kindle.
Yeah.
It was on my phone, and I don't want to read it on my phone.
Always download free sample.
Yes.
Check out the formatting.
That was my downfall.
Yeah.
$3 I felt like I couldn't miss.
Well.
Yeah. Was it the King Arthur? Was that an ebook we got?
Yeah.
I'm glad we got the ebook.
Yes.
I'd be mad if I spent the extra $5 on the physical print copy. Anyway, if you folks want... Are you planning on doing on the Read This podcast any James Bond stuff in the future? Because you've been doing Shakespeare lately.
Yeah, Shakespeare. I've got our episode coming out soon that you recorded with me a while back,
which is King Arthur.
Which is King Arthur. So quite a lot of Arthur-y, Shakespeare-y stuff. No immediate plans for James Bond, but I might do. Now that you've started me off, I might reread a few of the others because I remember really enjoying some of the later ones, and I think Live and Let Die was like peak, but I might have got that wrong. I might be confusing that with the film because that's one of my favorite films.
I think it was the film you're confusing with.
Yeah,
he does know how to make a title. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he definitely comes up with some good titles.
You're right. I think it is the names, and I think even though now it would be lambasted for cultural appropriation, I think what you said, Spencer, earlier about the world thing is a huge part of the appeal. Because as a kid, see even the cartoon semi-racist or full-on racist version of Jamaica or Italy or the States or whatever was part of the appeal. And then all of the tech and characters that sort of came with that. I suppose it's the same as like getting, I don't know, toy sets that are built around the theme or that kind of thing. That was the way you sort of made sense of the world as a kid. So I think that was what was really satisfying about them. So he is really good. I think he is good at that sort of aspect of world building, of sort of, you know, this is my big bad and I'll build this world around him and everything that comes with it.
Well, when we had Nicholas Obregon on the podcast, he told us that because he wrote Blue Light Yokohama, which is set in Japan, and he actually went to Japan to, you know, obviously for the research of the novel, he was telling us that publishers now actually look for stories that are set in what they consider exotic places for the audience you're writing for. So he was writing for a British and then an American audience. And obviously Japan would be considered like more of an exotic location. And I'm wondering if back in the James Bond time, well, I don't even have to wonder, obviously, if you're reading about like, you know, Paris and different places as an American, that would kind of be interesting to you. And even if you're English, where it would be easier to travel to those places, that'd still be...
As the man, it'd still be difficult,
yeah, like especially right after, you know, 10 to 20 years after World War II, going to like France and stuff wouldn't be the same experience. So having, you know, highfalutin casinos and, you know, these characters coming from like the Mediterranean, all this kind of stuff would be exotic. And that would probably that would make people want to read, because that's things they don't normally get in their fiction. Like we talked about before, how Moby Dick, now all that whaling talk in Moby Dick is just terrible. Yeah. You don't want to fucking, like, half of that book is almost unreadable. You're like, I don't care. I don't give a shit. I have Wikipedia. I can look this up. But back then, you know, people didn't really, if you weren't in whaling, you weren't a whaler, you probably didn't know about that stuff. It might actually been almost educational. Like you would actually like that. But, if you folks, terrible segue, if you folks want to catch up on some, you know, classic literature, Shakespearean era stuff, different things like that, head on over to, do you guys have an actual website for Ear Read This?
No.
Just the podcast? No. You're slacking, man. You're slacking. Yeah. Well, you are on social media. Do you have a Facebook? I believe you do. Yeah, I know you got Twitter.
All the big three social media, all
Twitter,
at
Instagram,
Ear Read This. Yeah.
So go to Ear Read This. That's ear, not here. Ear Read This on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Definitely a lot of great podcasts on there, too. I've listened to quite a bit of those. Also, by the way, sir, you know what? I'll bring this up off air. Anyway, if you want to check out our fiction, which we've been publishing different stories and whatnot, you go to drunkenpenwriting.com. Instagram and Facebook is Drunken Pen Writing. Also YouTube, which we've maybe make some videos.
Just quit bringing it up.
And Twitter at Drunk Pen Writing. Why don't you create a video, man? You're the face people want to see.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Anyway, thanks for listening. And once again, Ash, thanks for joining us. This was fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.